Now it will be general debate. I'll allow takers, starting with Professor Luo, Minister of Gender from Zambia, then member from South Africa. Let me see your name again. Okay, yeah. Followed by Mutswangwa, followed by Tofa from Zimbabwe, then Lesotho, yeah. Lesotho. In that order, please. You have the floor, strictly 3 minutes. And if possible, half a minute sometimes. But 3 minutes, you have 3 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me commend the movers of this motion. Again, this is an important motion for us as a region because we are discussing an issue that vividly displays the gender inequalities and power relations of the female and male gender, an issue which can be seen from other angles as a child labor issue, and can also be explained as a health issue, and in fact, it is one of the biggest contributors to maternal and child mortality, not to belabor the issue of vaginal fistulas. It's a rural phenomenon. For the economists, it's an economic, financial, and development issue. It's an issue that denies girls to explore their potential. And this has been actually premised on the dual legal systems that exist in our countries and the fact that we are not able to define a child. As an example, in my country, Zambia, if you admit people in the hospitals, a child ceases to be a child at 14. If you are looking for a driving license, you cease to be a child at 16. If you are going to vote, you cease to be a child at 18, etc., etc., etc. And if you are in the rural areas, you'd cease to be a child once you start having your menstruation periods. Mr. Chairman, what this has done to our countries is really something that I cannot even quantify. And the reason why it's an urgent problem, and that as countries we need to deal with it urgently. In my country, Zambia, Mr. President, just to give us an example, we had to mobilize the traditional leaders to be the main campaigners to ensure that we start eliminating and preventing child marriage. We also mobilized 10 ministries to come together and address this problem. The Ministry of Gender and Child Development, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Chiefs and Traditional Affairs, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Local Government and Housing, Ministry of Community, Mother and Child Health, Ministry of Youth and Sport, and the Ministry of Home Affairs. This problem, Mr. President, if I had the powers that you have as president sitting there, I would just say, as soon as you countries go back to your countries, can we come together and make sure that this bill we are talking about, which SADC-PF has been working on, the model law, can we ensure that before we meet next, that this has been sorted out and dealt with? Because we really need to prevent and stop child marriage. If I had more time, Mr. President, I would have liked to say more, but all I can do is support this motion and also call on SADC-PF to quickly come up with this model law, but also call on my colleagues from other countries to make sure that they join the fight of preventing child marriage and even outlawing it completely. We have done the child code bill in Zambia. We have a marriage bill now at the level of consultations, and it is our sincere hope that before the end of this year, these two bills will be passed and powers will be given to traditional leaders through bylaws to deal with people at community level. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I will recognize Honorable Mutswang from Zimbabwe. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really want to thank the Honorable from Malawi, Honorable Dr. Kabwila for seconding, and obviously the mover, Honorable Imelda from Zambia. This is a very, very important motion, and I really implore the House to really take some time and think seriously about it. I know when issues like this are being said, sometimes it's belittled, sometimes people don't want to hear about it, but we are saying it's a campaign awareness. We need to continuously talk about it. We need to include it in, as members of parliament, in our areas of mandates, in our constituencies, in our communities. We need to include this in our community educational workshops. Bring all the stakeholders in those communities, the traditional leaders, the religious leaders, because these are evil things which we need to curtail. As a mother of 4 boys myself, I have no girl. I've always wondered, where else have my boys been told about the evils of gender inequality? Where else have they been taught about the evils of gender-based violence? Where else have they been taught about the evils of child marriages? I see it's important we actually advocate for the ministries of education in our countries to include it in the CV, in the curriculum vitae. It needs to be taught from early age, early school, all the way up. These evils, we need to instill them in our children as they grow, so that when we are grown-up men, you don't say, oh, they've started again, talking about those things. No, we need that campaign awareness, honorable members. We need to outlaw early marriages and forced marriages. I wish I had more time. I would give examples of what we are doing in Zimbabwe, but surely, yes, it's always good to have legislation in place. It is very crucial. But if there is no implementation, it's a matter of changing the way people have always thought. It's a process. It's not about the paper. It's about educating people. That's why it's critical to bring in all the stakeholders. And I repeat, we need traditional healers, traditional leaders, religious leaders, and everyone to make sure that we succeed in curtailing early child marriages. I thank you, Mr. President.
Indeed, you had 1 more minute, but thank you for winding up early. Yeah, but then the chair heard you saying you only have boys, you have no girls. I have noted with serious concern. Honorable Tofa. Honorable Tofa.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I contribute to this motion, it's a very important motion, Mr. President. Mr. President, I think we need to treat this issue with the seriousness it deserves. We must go back and implement, in fact, criminalize the marriage before the age of 18 as a way of deterring the perpetrators from continuing. Because, Mr. President, it's becoming the order of the day. It's become very fashionable, and people just feel free to do as and when they please with the girl child. So a very strong and clear message needs to be sent. If you looked at, I looked at the report from UNFPA, factors that promote and reinforce child marriages, as were alluded to by other contributors, that it's all to do with poverty and economic survival. Mr. President, the community depends on us. They expect us to implement the laws. They are surprised because they don't understand the technicalities of what needs to be involved. So it's important for us as legislators to make sure we enforce the law and align whichever laws need to be aligned. Mr. President, as was said, Africa has the highest incidence of child marriage, with over 70% marrying under the age of 18. Malawi, Mr. President, needs really to be congratulated for passing the law of no marriage to a girl child under the age of 18, and I think it's very important that we emulate this. Mr. President, the impact that marriage to a girl under the age of 18 has is long-lasting. And, Mr. President, marriage to a girl child under the age of 18 reverses the war that we have, that we are trying to fight on the gender equality. It stunts the progress, and we need to fight it as much as we can. Mr. President, the impact that this has also is on families, on communities, is because the girl child, as the heading of the motion says, girl child, this child is not yet ready to raise a family. And this child still needs to grow. Mr. President, in our own country, Zimbabwe has not been spared the scourge. As we are gathered here, honorable members, there's a debate raging in Zimbabwe on the matter with the view of seriously putting stringent measures of pedophiles who abuse girls, because this is what they are. And one other very important aspect that we tend not to look at, and I feel very strongly about, is, as I end my contribution, Mr. President, which cannot be overemphasized, is the psychological support that is very important, is a very important component of the rehabilitation of this girl child that would have been affected by this abuse. I could cite an example as well, Mr. President, a very short one. I happened to visit a home just last week in Bulawayo. It is a safe house for pregnant girls, and I'm talking about girls as young as 10 years old that were being looked after by other women and caregivers, if I could say that. And the caregivers were giving these young girls a very rough time. And the manager of the safe house couldn't understand until she decided to say, let's get a capacity building workshop for these caregivers. And they had a session, and it was during that session that it came up that these caregivers, out of 4 of them, 3 of these caregivers had actually been made pregnant at the age of 12 and at the age of 13, and they had been forced to grow up. So they kept saying that these girls are, you know, making up, if you like. So I think it's very important that we look at that aspect. So I support this motion. Thank you.
Let's quickly move. It's South Africa now. The honourable member behind there.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm glad you eventually recognized me. Thank you very much, sir. Let me at the very outset condemn this act of violation of a child's right to dignity, respect, and basic human rights with the contempt it deserves, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to add, one of our honorable members earlier on said, where you find a mother, you find a child. I just want to add, where you find a father, you find a child. I'm a very proud father of a girl child. My colleague, Honorable Gertrude Imenda from Zambia, in proposing this motion, expresses deep concern that early and forced child marriage is a serious challenge in our continent and more so in the region, with 2 of our member states having the highest rate of child marriages. Now, Mr. President, it is for this reason that I now call on the SADC-PF to walk the talk in ensuring that this matter receives its urgent and appropriate attention and action, Mr. President. Mr. President, this forum must be in a position to play a meaningful role in addressing this challenge, or else we will be failing the very people we are supposed to be protecting. Mr. President, a failure to end early forced child marriages means SADC has failed. Despite legislative framework in places in many countries, this violation of child's rights continues unabated, with children as young as 12 being abducted, raped, and forced into marriage by much older men. Mr. President, let us take responsibility for this as members of parliament from different member states. What have we done to stop this? What have we done to discourage this? What have we done to educate our people in this regard? What have we done to emphasize to the people on the ground and speak to them in terms of speaking out, in terms of the challenges that they face in this regard? Mr. President, these children are exposed to rape, teenage pregnancy with serious implications, including HIV, sexually transmitted diseases, and pregnancy-related complications such as infant mortality and maternal mortality. Kids are often deprived of education. These kids skip the crucial development phase in their lives. Mr. President, the time has come to act. No amount of talking and or lip service will stop. This is no longer a individual country challenge, but a SADC challenge, Mr. President. Mr. President, let us interrogate this matter as member states to find everlasting solutions and protect our children. Let us ensure that those responsible pay the ultimate price. The role played by chiefs, indunas, and all others is important in ensuring that those responsible are brought to book. In South Africa, sex before the age of 16 is a criminal offense. We have various laws in place, including but not limited to human trafficking and the exploitation of children. These are criminal acts and are therefore punishable in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act. Let me add, Mr. President, that the permissible age for marriage in the Republic of South Africa is 18 years. Mr. President, we need to, as a matter of urgency, put mechanisms in place to prevent child and human trafficking. We need to ensure that religious and cultural practices are in line with this move to improve the lives of our children. Mr. President, we are here for the last week at the 5-star hotel, enjoying 3 meals a day, the beautiful views of the sea, whilst our children in the region are burning. We call for urgent action. Thank you.
Thank you. I recognize Lesotho, the lady there, Honorable Lesotho. Lesotho.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to be brief.
Please mention your names for purposes of.
Mantabi Sempotledi from Parliament of Lesotho. I'm going to be very brief as I support this motion. I want to tell a story in our country whereby our government had signed and rectified the free education policies. Unfortunately, we don't reap the fruits because we send children to school. In the process, they get married even before they get to high school or secondary, because we have this customary law that I think it allows a male, after their initiation, from the initiation school, they are ready to get married, so they can marry whoever they feel like, regardless of age and so on and so forth. In our country, we call it hoshubedisa. I think I fully support this motion and think our countries can make sure that we put these laws in practice as soon as possible, because as we know, the women are the drivers of the economy in our countries. Really, I support this motion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I recognize Botswana. Leader. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't think we will differ, Mr. Chairman. We all support this motion, but the issue of child marriage is widespread, especially in areas where poverty is rampant and families lack access to alternative opportunities such as income generating and educational programs. Girls can be seen as an asset from which families can gain property and livestock from bride wealth exchanges, Mr. President. Other factors that lead to the ongoing practice of child marriage include ingrained gender bias, with a preference for sons, inadequate laws, fear of HIV infection, which has encouraged men in many countries to seek younger partners, and otherwise, an observance of traditional cultural religious practice such as payment of a bride price. Early marriage can be a strategy for survival for some families, whether it is relieving them of a burden or receiving a form of payment to support them, Mr. President. In Botswana, Your Excellency, in 2009, we have a Children's Act which defines a child as a person who is below the age of 18 years. The Act also states that a child shall not be subjected by any person to a forced marriage. The Act itself states that the penalty for a person who contravenes a certain provision of the Act, including the provision that deals with forced marriages, will be either or both serve a prison term from 7 to 10 years and fine between 30,000 to 50,000, Mr. President. We really don't want to dwell on this issue. We all agree that forced marriages, children's marriages shouldn't be allowed in any other country. But as SADC Parliamentary Forum, we should adopt this motion. In all fairness, this is one of the very, very important motions that is welcomed by all of us. Thank you, Mr. President.
The chair is now under very serious pressure. Well, Botswana has expressed its views. Can Botswana wait? I'll get Mozambique. Honourable member from Mozambique. The chair is under very, very serious pressure to curtail debate and to curtail business in view of our time. But let's quickly proceed. Let's see what we can do. Yes.
Senhor Presidente, eu pedi a palavra para, em primeiro lugar, quero me apresentar. Sou Francisca Domingos Tomás, de Moçambique. Pedi a palavra para apoiar a proposta de resolução, dizendo que, de facto, é muito importante que nós possamos aprovar essa proposta de resolução para que tenhamos uma legislação ou, pelo menos, algumas diretrizes para a eliminação de casamentos prematuros, por aquilo que disseram as minhas colegas. As minhas colegas falaram muito sobre o perigo de casamentos prematuros. E eu não gostaria de repetir, mas apenas dizer que pedi a palavra quando vi que até agora só um homem que pediu a palavra a defender que tenhamos que aprovar esta resolução. Então estou preocupada. Se neste Parlamento só são as mulheres que estão a defender a aprovação dessa resolução, com quem vamos trabalhar nos nossos parlamentos? Se nós confiamos que os homens trabalhem juntamente com as mulheres para que possamos desenvolver atividades parlamentares nos nossos países e aqui comecemos só a defender nós, as mulheres, entre nós, com quem vamos trabalhar? Senhor Presidente, estou preocupada. Gostaria de apelar aos nossos parlamentares, os nossos deputados, homens, para falarem desses assuntos, porque, por vezes, é onde reside o maior problema. E dizer também que não basta legislar, nós temos que desempenhar um grande trabalho nos nossos países, na mobilização da sociedade em geral, das populações, através dos nossos partidos políticos, através dos líderes tradicionais e através da sociedade civil, para que possamos implementar aquilo que nós estamos a dizer aqui. Porque o problema parte mesmo da educação lá, da família, por causa da obtenção de valores com os casamentos prematuros. Muito obrigada, Senhor Presidente.
Let's have a male member from Botswana, as indicated by... You have the floor, and please, I wish I now reduce to 2 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me draw the attention of the esteemed members here to the very language of the motion and indicate that it occasions me some discomfort in the following sense. It consistently refers to early and forced child marriages. Early and forced. The end there is conjunctive. Let us bring it down to brass tacks so we can understand this concern. The consent or the authority in respect of children, and in a lot of instances even minors, reposes with the parent or the guardian. The force in relation to the marriage would therefore have to refer to a situation where there is no consent, the absence of consent from either the parent or the guardian. And so this motion seems to confine itself to a situation of force, where a marriage is forced in the sense, and I'm speaking legally and in serious, strictly legal interpretive terms, so that we understand what we are trying to achieve. If there's consent from a parent or a guardian, in the manner in which the motion proposes, then there would be no problem. So we need to separate. Are we talking, and in fact when we say early and forced child marriages, we may just as well say we seek to prohibit child marriage. No early, no force. Simple and straightforward. Child marriage. If we say force early, then we are importing all sorts of controversies. So we need to be very clear, and that's why I thought I should raise this point. Thank you.
And you support the motion. And you support the motion.
On condition it is tidied up appropriately, then I will support, yes.
Did I see a hand from Mauritius? Honorable lady from, did you put up your hand? You did, yes. I registered you here. Yeah, I have a list. Mauritius, 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that what I have to say, I totally concur with what has been said by, I have to say, a learned friend from Botswana about the way the term is coined. Indeed, and I was going to intervene precisely to demonstrate the law in Mauritius, the way it is coined. We have the criminalization, we have the prohibition of marriage before the age of 18, subject to from 16 to 18 years old. It is subject to permission through application to a judge, through a judge in chambers, upon certain conditions being met and the consent of the parents, both parents being given. That is an exception to what we coin as child, but the starting point is the definition of child. How does country to country define child? In Mauritius, similar to South Africa, the child is defined as from the age of 16, but in different countries that would vary depending on the cultural and legal meaning attached to, definition attached to that word. So that would vary from country to country. But suffice be it said that the parameters are there, the definitions will be there, but the law says, as in South Africa, sexual intercourse is illegal, is criminalized as from the age of 16. So therefore, the issue of child marriage does not come, because with marriage, of course, you will have sexual intercourse, and the marriage will be as from the age of 18 you can consent. So de facto, as a matter of fact, it eliminates, it deals with this problem of child marriage. That's the deterrent aspect of it. I have seen, on a second, time is pressing, that's why I'm going fast as well. And what I'm going to say is, from Mauritius, I see that as Lim 2, we call on the SADC Parliamentary Forum to expedite the development of the SADC model law on child marriage and ensure that it is approved. We, of course, in toto, support this motion, but what we have to say is that Mauritius has already, and earlier on in this forum, we had talked about exchange and sharing of our resources, of our knowledge, tapping on this, and to bring this argument further, we're saying that we have already, just like South Africa, we already have the law there, which has been running for the last so many decades, and has been tried and tested. We have the model law, which would be very happy to collaborate and bring forward here. So I wish to express that, and it is not just my opinion, it's that of our head of delegate as well, Mr. Ajuda, Mr. Gobin, Honorable Gobin.
You support the motion?
We support the motion. And the third, I lose the track of my thoughts because we're trying to press because of time. The third point I wanted to raise is that the issue of child marriage is very much interlinked with proprietary rights, and we need to address that, because that again varies from country to country. Where can a woman own property, circumstances in which she can dispose of her property, circumstances in which her husband has rights over that property, etc. So child marriage has to be dealt with in parallel with civil law. It's not just the criminalization of the child marriage, but it's the rights to property. I mean, I will not have time to develop what I'm trying to say here, but I raise this for further thoughts for this forum. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. The chair is being very, very democratic. Because one of the days I want to become a reverend, and I want to be as good as possible to everybody. Right Honourable Speaker from Lesotho, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. I strongly felt that I should come in just now before the mover winds up, because, Chairperson, I regret, Honourable President, I support the motion. Let me start by saying I support the motion. Nonetheless, I regret that we did not have enough time to interrogate these matters, because as issues of concern were raised during the debate, most of them were complications associated with early pregnancies, which is something that can happen even when these girls are not married. I mean, examples were given here of like losing uterus or the womb, obstetric, fistula, as well as difficulties of raising children when one does not have means. These are the things that can happen, you know, even when one is not in an early marriage. So I was wondering as to whether this has been properly captioned or what, but I thought probably I should raise this before the mover comes in to wind up.
Thank you. Honourable Gonesi from Zimbabwe. You promised me 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Honourable President. I've just come with this intervention, I think, for 2 reasons. The first one, I think, is just to reiterate that, and I believe I'm speaking on behalf of all the male members of this forum, that we are indeed in support of the motion 100%. And that if the Honourable Thomas had watched from our body language, we're actually nodding in agreement when all the submissions were being made. And the second reason is simply to say that I think we must have some consistency, so that in all the regions in SADC, we have the same definition, so that when we are looking at children, we are looking at everyone below the age of 18, and we have harmonization of, whereas in Zimbabwe, for instance, we have got this inconsistency, and we are moving towards the harmonization of all laws so that they are in sync with our constitution, which has actually prohibited marriage of anyone, whether boy or girl, below the age of 18. And we want our laws to be in conformity with those provisions. And secondly, I want to agree with the Honorable Member from Botswana that I think what we must focus on is that we must have this on child marriage, so that is clear, so that there's clarity. And that anyone who is below the age of 18, what we are saying as a region is that we don't want any marriage to take place until and unless someone has attained the age of majority, we should be 18 in all cases. And I want to conclude by saying that we are 150% behind the
Yes, even the chair is 100% in support. I'll end up with Angola, definitely. This time, Angola is the last contributor on this.
Obrigada, Sr. Presidente. Já pensei que estaria ultrapassada, pois que já muita gente falou, mas queria também dar a minha contribuição, felicitando as proponentes desta moção e apoio completamente a proposta de resolução. Mas gostaria de pedir que se levasse essa proposta para o nosso grupo regional para analisarmos profundamente a situação e trazermos uma proposta para aprovação. Dizer que Angola tem a lei do Código de Família, que proíbe os casamentos antes dos 18 anos. Também temos a lei da violência contra a lei da violência doméstica, que entra também essas violações de menores que com menos de 18 anos sejam forçadas a ter algum relacionamento e que engravide. Mas existem muitos casos desses a nível do meio rural e nós, responsáveis, temos a responsabilidade de ir junto às autoridades tradicionais, junto às autoridades religiosas para sensibilizar e educar as famílias para evitar que isso aconteça, mas isto não é o suficiente. Teremos que continuar a trabalhar para que isso acabe. Para dizer que praticamente estou ultrapassada em relação à intervenção da minha irmã de Moçambique, que os casos são iguais e o que é necessário é que nós continuemos a trabalhar na sensibilidade das mães no meio rural para acabarmos com isso, se é que nós queremos fazer com que atinjamos os 50% de mulheres na liderança, a mulher tem que se formar. E se estiver em casamentos precoces, a mulher não terá a possibilidade de aumentar o seu nível de escolaridade. Tendo em conta o tempo, eu apenas apoio a proposta e espero falar mais sobre o assunto nas nossas reuniões. Muito obrigado, Sr. Presidente.
Thank you indeed. I now allow Honorable Emenda to respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to appreciate the contributions that have come from the floor of this House. I take cognizance of the following countries that have contributed. I can't mention them in terms of the individuals one by one, but I appreciate the contribution from Angola. Again, it's in alphabetical order, if possible. Angola, Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique, Republic of South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. I just wanted to particularly respond, if that's the right word, to the sentiments from our young lawyer there from Botswana. Actually, although I'm not a lawyer, I thought the title was sort of quite funny because, but then I had no legal interpretation. But now that he has mentioned, it makes my suspicion sort of or concrete. But maybe I can just mention that we are mindful that every country in SADC has laws in place regarding the minimum age of marriage. And further that almost every country in SADC, to differing extents of course, has legislation prohibiting child marriage. However, only a handful of countries in SADC prohibit the marriage of anyone under the age of 18, with no exceptions. And we didn't want to start, as we prepare this model law, to start having exceptions here and there. A number of countries in SADC generally limit marriages to individuals 18 years or above, but permit such marriages either with the consent of the parents or guardians or with judicial consent. In addition, a number of countries in SADC have differing ages for marriage for boys and girls, providing for the marriage of girls at younger ages than those of boys. For example, in Angola, the law prohibits the marriage of boys under 16, but only prohibits marriage for girls under 15. It's therefore imperative for SADC as a region to have a clear law on this one. Mr. President, maybe to also mention that we are going to come up with a model law, and the consultant has already been engaged to draft this law. So the concern of the definition and the language will be taken into account, and thank you for bringing that up. Sir, the environment in SADC is still not conducive to the survival, protection, and development of children. SADC countries need to review their social justice and legal implementation mechanism and service delivery systems in order to ensure that the child is fully protected from these vices. The SADC model legislation is meant to help support a common approach to this common problem. And I implore all the members of this august House as parliamentarians to render their unwavering support to the process of developing the SADC modern law on the eradication of child marriage. Let us be counted among those who stood up and spoke against this practice for the sake of our children. Mr. President, I move the motion.
Thank you. I put the question that the motion on the need for SADC member states to prevent and eliminate early and forced child marriages be adopted. Those of that opinion say agreed. Those of the contrary opinion say no. The motion has been adopted. Now, honorable members, honorable presiding officers, and honorable members, the House doesn't seem to have time to deal with business on fifth order. This is the motion on criminalization of HIV transmission, exposure and disclosure. The House doesn't have time for this. And I would like to plead for your indulgence that we defer this business to the next session, which is due somewhere around October, November. This kind of arrangement doesn't require a motion. This is the general practice in national parliaments. If there is no time at all to deal with a particular business, then obviously those items fall off and they are revived in the next session. So I would take it that the House has agreed to this arrangement without necessarily pushing a motion, and the one who is supposed to move it should bear in mind that this will form the first business in our next session. Honourable members, we are closing our business today. We are closing our sitting today. And before I adjourn the House and die, let me say a few words. The first thing is to thank Honorable Speaker for South Africa for hosting this parliament, for keeping us, for everything, providing transport, food, accommodation, name it, the cocktails, the gifts. She has motherly looked after us. Can we clap a hand of applause? Yesterday, without disclosing what transpired, the executive committee was discussing where would be our next venue. I said Durban. Durban again. We must say that, you know, you should thank South Africa on our behalf, Honorable Speaker, South African government for looking after us very well. The Premier, I've received another card, the Premier has been. So we thank you very much. Also, I would like to thank the presiding officers, the speakers in this house. They have been very encouraging. Take it from me. And these are our leaders in our national parliaments. But just look at the way they were debating and the way they were coming up with concrete and constructive ideas. Very enriching. I, for one, I will go back with a lot of fond memories as regards how the speakers have performed. They are here, they have been here full time and contributing very much. I sincerely appreciate. We can applaud them with a hand, please. Yeah. I also want to thank members. Members, you really had the appetite for contributing. A lot of intelligent staff. And those who were capturing us, I think they know that indeed we have the knowledge, we have the information, and we have the capacity to become a parliament, a regional parliament, a very bright, vibrant parliament. Really, yes. Actually, I was surprised with some of the contributions. I didn't know that men also fall on issues of gender. Yeah, if the chair was contributing, I was going to contribute on gender very much. But I want to thank you sincerely, honourable members, for keeping the House active and vibrant all the time, and being punctual and being full-time seated in the House. That is very commendable. I want to thank SADC-PF Secretariat for facilitating our meeting. They have done a tremendous job. They were all over, coming up with the documents, doing these issues of protocol, and of course arranging our sub-meetings and things like that. They have been all over. It has been a very long period for them because they have been extensively busy. I sincerely want to thank them. I also want to thank Parliament staff from national parliaments. They are here. They have been very handy, very, very supportive. I would also want to thank the interpreters. We hope, yes. Yes, I also want to thank the interpreters for the job well done, and also the hotel for making sure that the puddings and what have you are there. Definitely, without the hotel staff, this session would have collapsed. There's no way we can speak the good English or the good French or the good Portuguese. That way we have been speaking on an empty belly. But it's because the hotel were forthcoming and make sure that food is available. I'm being encouraged that we should also thank the excellent media coverage as arranged by Speaker of South Africa, Madam Bete. This is definitely part of the hosting, and it has been very worthwhile. We sincerely appreciate. But that together with the staff, Parliament staff of South Africa, led by the Secretary to Parliament, he's around here with us. He's a very, very, very hard-working person, and you know, he is very sober. He's not someone who easily gets annoyed. Even if you send him for something 3 times, he will still do it and without taking offense at all. Honourable members, indeed, let me quote what George Bush said in his inaugural address as President of USA. He said, "I take as my guide," of course I quote, "I take as my guide the hope of a saint. In crucial things, unity. In important things, diversity. And in all things, generosity. End of quote. SADC-PF will have to unite, whatever is the case. When you meet a member of parliament from Angola, you have met a member of parliament from Malawi, and the issue should be discussed as equals. This is very important. Diversity is about crucial matters which we come across as SADC. What is it that we're trying to do? Is there a better way of doing it? How diverse can it be done? So I want to wish you well as you go back to your national countries, but I'll continue with a small announcement, and that will be done after I've adjourned the House signed down. Honourable members, we have now come to the end of our business for the day. Therefore, the 37th Plenary Assembly session stands adjourned until the next Plenary Assembly session. House is adjourned, signed die. Thank you.